Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. Nathaniel Nate Ventura never believed in fairy tales. Growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Detroit, he learned early that everything worth having came with a price. By 35, he'd built Ventura Security Systems from a garage startup into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that provided cutting-edge security for high-net-worth clients. His success came from an uncanny ability to predict how people would behave at their worst. People show you who they are when they think no one's watching, he often told his employees. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd missed the warning signs in his own life. Vanessa Sterling caught his eye at a charity gala 4 years ago. With auburn hair that caught the light and a laugh that seemed to bubble up from somewhere genuine, she'd approached his table with confidence. "You look like the only person here who isn't trying to impress someone," she'd said, sliding into the seat beside him. Nate had smiled. "Maybe I'm just better at hiding it." Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Vanessa worked as an executive assistant at Monarch Financial, one of the city's most prestigious investment firms. She was ambitious, sharp, and seemed to admire Nate's self-made success. When she became pregnant 18 months into their marriage, Nate had been surprised but pleased. At 39, he hadn't expected to become a father. "We're going to be amazing parents," Vanessa had whispered, her hand guiding his to her still flat stomach. Now, as Nate stood in their custom-built 5-bedroom home overlooking Lake Michigan, reviewing final preparations for tomorrow's baby shower, he felt a momentary twinge of unease. Vanessa had been distant lately, often working late with her new boss, Gregory Holt, who'd taken over as CEO of Monarch 6 months ago. "Just setting myself up for a promotion after maternity leave," she'd explained when Nate questioned her hours. "Gregory says I have real potential for management." Nate's college friend and head of security, Brody Maxwell, entered the room carrying an elaborate floral arrangement. "Where should I put this monstrosity?" Brody asked, his voice tainted with amusement. "Table by the window," Nate replied, checking items off his list. Vanessa wanted everything perfect. Brody set down the flowers and studied his friend. "Everything okay? You seem tense." Nate shrugged. "Vanessa hasn't answered my text today. She said she had meetings, but... Brody pressed. "Nothing." Nate shook his head. "Just pregnancy brain, probably. She's been forgetting a lot lately." Brody's expression darkened briefly before he forced a smile. "I'm sure that's it. Pre-baby jitters." Later that night, Nate called Lynette Winters, Vanessa's closest friend and coworker. "Hey, Lynette. Vanessa mentioned you were helping her with something for tomorrow. She's been unreachable all day." A pause. What? "No, I haven't spoken to her since yesterday. She left early today. Said she had a doctor's appointment." The unease in Nate's stomach solidified into something heavier. "Thanks. Must have misunderstood." After hanging up, Nate opened his laptop and checked the security system he'd installed throughout their home. A system Vanessa didn't know recorded everything. He scrolled through footage from the previous weeks, noticing patterns he'd been too busy to see. Vanessa on lengthy phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered rooms. Text messages she shielded from his view. Late nights where her car's GPS showed stops that didn't match her explanations. Nate closed the laptop, his expression hardening. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. Chapter 2, The Revelation. The caterers arrived at noon, setting up elegant displays throughout the first floor of the Ventura home. 60 guests were expected at 2 o'clock. Friends, family, and business associates coming to celebrate the impending arrival of the Ventura heir. Everything was perfect except for one glaring absence, the mother-to-be. "Still no word?" Lynette asked, arriving early to help. Nate shook his head, his smile practiced and calm despite the storm brewing inside him. "She'll be here. Probably lost track of time shopping for the baby." But as 1 o'clock came and went, followed by 1:30, Nate's phone remained silent. Guests began arriving at 2, expressing delight at the decorations and asking for Vanessa. "She's running late," became Nate's mantra, delivered with increasing coldness. At 2:45, as Nate stood surrounded by gifts and well-wishers, his phone finally buzzed. "Sorry, lost track of time. Start without me. Be there soon." No explanation. No excuse. Brody, who had been watching his friend carefully, moved closer. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Perfect," Nate replied, his voice lifeless. "She's on her way." The party continued, an awkward affair with guests shooting concerned glances at the door. Nate played his part impeccably, the excited father-to-be, graciously accepting congratulations and gifts for a child whose mother couldn't be bothered to show up. At 4:30, as the last guests were leaving, the front door finally opened. Vanessa breezed in, her designer maternity dress showing off her 7-month belly, her hair and makeup flawless. Too flawless for someone who had merely lost track of time. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," she called cheerfully, then stopped short seeing the nearly empty house. "Oh." Nate stood by the gift table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You missed it." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly before returning. "I texted you. Things ran long. You know how it is." "What things exactly?" Nate asked, his voice dangerously soft. Brody cleared his throat. "I'll help the caterers finish packing up," he said, making a tactical retreat to the kitchen. Vanessa dropped her purse on a chair and waved dismissively. "Work stuff. Gregory needed my input on a major client presentation. It couldn't wait. On Saturday, finance doesn't operate on a 9 to 5, Nate. You know that." She approached the gift table, examining the packages. "Looks like people were generous." "Your doctor's office called," Nate said flatly. "They wanted to confirm your Monday appointment. Funny thing is, they mentioned you'd missed your appointment yesterday." Vanessa froze, then recovered smoothly. "Oh, right. I rescheduled. Must have forgotten to tell you. Your mother called too. She was worried when you weren't here. She mentioned you told her you couldn't have lunch last week because you were on bed rest per doctor's orders." Vanessa turned, her expression hardening. "Are you interrogating me? Should I be?" She sighed dramatically, one hand resting on her belly in a gesture Nate once found endearing but now seemed calculated. "Look, I didn't think the baby shower was that important. It's just people giving us stuff we could buy ourselves. I had a meeting with Gregory that couldn't wait." "A meeting?" Nate repeated. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Fine, it was more like a date. We had lunch at Bellamy's to discuss my future at the company. I told you he sees potential in me." The casual admission stunned Nate into momentary silence. "A date," he finally repeated. "With your boss. During our baby shower." "Don't make it sound sordid," Vanessa snapped. "It's business. This is important for our future." "Our future," Nate echoed, a cold smile forming. Without another word, he turned and walked upstairs to his office, closing the door quietly behind him. Inside, he unlocked his safe and removed a flash drive, plugging it into his computer. Video files opened. Security footage from his company vehicles, including the one Vanessa thought was in the shop, but had actually been parked near Monarch Financial for the past month. He clicked through timestamps, watching as Vanessa and a silver-haired man in expensive suits entered and exited hotels, restaurants, and once. Nate's jaw tightened. Their marital home. The footage confirmed what he already knew but needed to verify. His wife had been sleeping with her boss for months, possibly longer. The child she carried, was it even his? Nate closed the files and sat in silence, his mind working with cold precision. When Brody knocked softly and entered the office an hour later, he found his friend eerily calm. "The caterers are gone," Brody said. "Vanessa's taking a bath. Want to tell me what's happening?" Nate looked up, his eyes clear and focused. "I need you to do something for me." Chapter 3, Deception. For the next 2 weeks, Nate played the role of oblivious husband perfectly. He apologized to Vanessa for overreacting about the baby shower, brought her breakfast in bed, and listened attentively to her stories about work. If she noticed the coldness behind his eyes or the careful distance he maintained physically, she didn't mention it. Meanwhile, his real attention focused elsewhere. With Brody's help, he hired Palmer Reed, a discreet private investigator recommended by a client. "I need everything," Nate told Palmer during their meeting at an out-of-the-way diner. Financial records, communications, patterns of behavior. Most importantly, I need DNA. Palmer raised an eyebrow. The child. Nate nodded, his expression grim. If it's not mine, that changes everything. And if it is yours, that changes nothing about what happens to her. While Palmer gathered information, Nate methodically prepared. He transferred funds to new accounts Vanessa couldn't access, documented every asset acquired before and during their marriage, and cataloged every lie she'd told him in the past 6 months. Brody watched his friend's transformation with concern. "I've never seen you like this," he commented one evening as they reviewed security footage in Nate's private office downtown. "You've never seen me betrayed before," Nate replied simply. "What exactly are you planning?" Nate's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Justice." 3 days later, Palmer delivered his findings. Nate sat in his office after hours, reading through the extensive report. Gregory Holt had a history of pursuing his assistants, usually discarding them after a few months. Vanessa had been different. Their affair had started shortly after he joined Monarch, nearly 10 months ago. The most damning evidence came in the form of text messages Palmer had recovered. "Gregory, when are you telling him about us?" "Vanessa, after the baby comes. He needs to think it's his until everything's finalized. His name on the birth certificate makes things easier. Gregory, smart girl. That security company of his is worth a fortune. Get half in the divorce and we'll be set." Nate's hands shook with rage as he read through dozens of similar exchanges. The paternity test results came last, conclusive proof that the child Vanessa carried was, in fact, Gregory Holt's. That night, when Vanessa mentioned a weekend business retreat with the executive team the following month, Nate simply smiled and said he'd make his own plans. She didn't know he'd already seen the reservation Gregory had made for them at a luxury resort in Sedona, booked for the week after her scheduled C-section. "I'm so lucky to have you," Vanessa said, kissing him on the cheek before heading upstairs. "Most husbands would be jealous of how much time I spend with my boss." "Most husbands don't know what I know," Nate whispered after she'd gone. The final piece fell into place when Nate met with Abigail Frost, a cutthroat divorce attorney known for representing high-profile clients. "With the evidence you provided, we can file for divorce immediately," Abigail said, reviewing the documents. "The prenuptial agreement is solid. She'll get nothing if infidelity is proven. But are you sure you want to wait? Every day you stay married after discovering her affair weakens your position." Nate leaned forward. "I'm not interested in just winning the divorce. I want her to understand what she's lost. I want her lover to lose everything too. And for that, I need time." Abigail studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I've sent the DNA test to a contact at the hospital. When she delivers, there will be routine testing that confirms the child isn't yours. That should help with any custody claim she might attempt." As Nate left the meeting, his phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Hey, can you pick up dinner? I'm craving Italian." "Anything for you," Nate replied, his voice warm and loving. "I'll be home soon." He hung up and continued walking, already mentally reviewing the next phase of his plan. The foundation was set. Now the real work could begin. Chapter 4: Strategy. The nursery was a vision in pale yellow and gray, with a hand-painted mural of woodland animals Nate had commissioned from a local artist. He stood in the doorway, watching as Vanessa folded tiny clothes and arranged them in the dresser, her 8-month belly making her movements awkward. "It's perfect," she said, smiling at him. "You've thought of everything." "That's what I do," Nate replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I plan for contingencies." Over the past weeks, he'd assembled a team he privately called his Revenge Cabinet. Besides Brody and Palmer, he'd recruited Sophia Reeves, a brilliant computer specialist who'd once worked for his security firm before starting her own cybersecurity company. "What you're asking isn't exactly legal," Sophia had warned during their meeting at her office. "I'm not asking you to steal anything," Nate had replied. "Just monitor and alert me to specific activities. Think of it as an extension of the security services we already provide to Monarch Financial." Sophia had given him a long look. "This is personal. Everything's personal when it comes to security. That's what we sell, peace of mind." She'd eventually agreed, setting up subtle monitoring systems for the digital activities of both Vanessa and Gregory. Through her, Nate gained access to their private communications, financial transactions, and future plans. The most crucial ally came in the form of Darlene Quinn, Monarch Financial's board chairwoman. Nate had secured her home after a break-in 6 months earlier, installing a state-of-the-art security system at a steep discount. "I appreciate you meeting with me, Mrs. Quinn," Nate said as they sat in her private office after hours. "You saved my family's heirlooms and possibly our lives," Darlene replied. "And please call me Darlene. What can I do for you?" Nate placed a folder on her desk. "I have reason to believe your new CEO is compromising the company's reputation and possibly its financial standing." Darlene's expression remained neutral as she reviewed the contents. Documentation of Gregory's pattern of affairs with subordinates, including evidence of company resources used for personal rendezvous. "This is disturbing but hardly criminal," she noted. "Why bring this to me instead of HR?" "Because the final pages show something more concerning," Nate replied. "Gregory has been using insider information gained through these relationships to make personal investments ahead of Monarch's major client moves." Darlene's eyebrows shot up as she flipped to the transaction Sophia had uncovered. "This is securities fraud." "Yes, and while investigating that, I discovered something else." Nate handed her another document. "He's been quietly meeting with representatives from Archer Global, your biggest competitor." Darlene's face hardened. "You think he's planning to jump ship? Take our clients with him?" "I think he's planning to damage Monarch from within, weaken it for acquisition, and then collect a finder's fee from Archer when the takeover happens." "Why tell me this? Your wife works closely with him. Surely this puts her in an awkward position." Nate's smile was cold. "My wife is having an affair with Gregory Holt. The child she's carrying is his. I have my own reasons for wanting to see him ruined." Darlene sat back, reassessing the man before her. "I see. I'm not asking you to act now," Nate continued. "Just watch. Verify my information. When the time comes, and you'll know when, I'll ask for one favor." "And what might that be?" "A board meeting. Nothing more." As Nate left Monarch Financial that day, he received a text from Brody confirming that their final team member had agreed to help. Dr. Larissa Webb, the obstetrician who would be performing Vanessa's scheduled C-section in 3 weeks. Back in the nursery doorway, Nate watched as Vanessa placed a framed ultrasound photo on the shelf. "We never did decide on a name," he commented. Vanessa turned, something flashing behind her eyes. "I was thinking Gregory might be nice. After my boss, you know. He's been such a mentor to me." Nate fought to keep his expression neutral. "Gregory Ventura has a certain ring to it." Later that night, as Vanessa slept, Nate updated his calendar with key dates: the C-section, the business retreat Vanessa and Gregory had planned, and the quarterly Monarch Financial Board meeting conveniently scheduled for the same week. Everything was falling into place with a precision that would have impressed him if he weren't so consumed by cold rage. The baby would arrive soon, and with it the beginning of the end. Chapter 5. First Blood. Gregory Philip Holt Jr. was born on a Tuesday morning, 8 pounds, 7 ounces, with a shock of dark hair exactly like his biological father's. Nate stood by Vanessa's side during the C-section, playing the part of the doting husband and ecstatic new father. If Dr. Webb noticed his detachment, she gave no indication. "He's beautiful," Vanessa murmured groggily as the nurses placed the swaddled infant on her chest. "He looks just like you." Nate smiled tightly. "You think so? I see a lot of your features, too." The next day, as Vanessa recovered in her private hospital suite surrounded by flowers and visitors, Dr. Webb requested to speak with Nate privately. "There's been an irregularity in some of the standard tests," she said once they were alone in her office. "Nothing concerning for the baby's health, but something you should be aware of." She handed him a folder containing the DNA results Palmer had arranged. Nate pretended to read them for the first time, letting his expression shift from confusion to shock to devastation. "This can't be right," he whispered, his performance flawless. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ventura. The tests are conclusive. You're not the biological father of Vanessa's baby." Nate placed his head in his hands, shoulders shaking in a convincing display of a man whose world had just shattered. Does she know yet? No. I wanted to speak with you first. Please, don't tell her yet. I need time to process this. Dr. Webb nodded sympathetically. Of course. Take all the time you need. That evening, Nate returned to the hospital with a special gift. A custom silver rattle engraved with Gregory Philip Holt Jr. He placed it on Vanessa's bedside table while she was in the shower, then waited patiently for her return. When she emerged and spotted the rattle, the color drained from her face. "What is this?" she asked, voice barely audible. Nate picked up the rattle, examining it as if admiring the craftsmanship. "A gift for our son. You wanted to name him after your mentor, right? I thought I'd make it official. Gregory Holt's son should carry his name, don't you think?" Vanessa gripped the edge of her bed. "Nate, I can explain." "No need," he interrupted, his voice eerily calm. "The DNA test explained everything. Standard procedure, apparently. Though I suppose you would have told me eventually. Maybe after the business retreat next week in Sedona." Vanessa's face crumpled. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. It's what the text messages between you and Gregory think. It's what the hotel receipts think. It's what the security footage from our home while I was traveling thinks." Nate stood, sliding the rattle into his pocket. "I've canceled our joint credit cards and frozen our shared accounts. The house security codes have been changed. Your things will be packed and sent to your mother's." "You can't do this," Vanessa hissed, panic replacing her shock. "That's my home. I'm entitled to half of everything." Nate smiled coldly. "You should read your prenup more carefully. Infidelity clause, page 4, paragraph 3. You get nothing." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and don't bother calling Gregory for help. He's about to have problems of his own." As he walked out, Vanessa's phone began ringing. The caller ID showed Darlene Quinn. Nate's plan was proceeding perfectly. By morning, Vanessa would learn that Gregory had been suspended pending an investigation into financial improprieties and ethical violations. By evening, the anonymous tip Sophia had arranged would reach the SEC regarding Gregory's insider trading. The first blood had been drawn. The real damage was yet to come. Chapter 6, Counterattack. 3 days after Vanessa and baby Gregory were discharged from the hospital, Nate received the expected legal threat. Vanessa's hastily hired attorney, a second-tier lawyer named Bennett Kramer, sent a blustering letter demanding half of all marital assets, ownership of the lake house, and substantial child support despite the DNA evidence. "She claims you knew about the affair and tacitly accepted it by staying in the marriage," Abigail explained during their meeting. "Therefore, the infidelity clause shouldn't apply." Nate laughed humorlessly. "Of course she does. She's also claiming the prenup was signed under duress and that you manipulated her by hiding assets before the marriage. Predictable. What's our response?" Abigail smiled sharply. "We give them enough to worry about that they back off these ridiculous claims." The counterattack came the next day when Vanessa attempted to enter the offices of Ventura Security Systems, demanding to speak with Nate. Security footage showed her growing increasingly agitated when she was denied entry. "Mrs. Ventura, you no longer have authorization to enter this building," the security guard explained calmly. "It's still my name on the company," she shouted. "I'm entitled to half of everything he owns." The outburst was recorded and promptly sent to Abigail, who added it to their growing file of evidence showing Vanessa's true intentions. Meanwhile, Gregory Holt was fighting his own battles. The Monarch Financial Board had suspended him with pay during the investigation, but the SEC inquiry had frozen much of his personal assets. When he tried contacting Vanessa, he found his calls consistently dropped and texts undelivered, courtesy of Sophia's digital interference. "They're getting desperate," Brody reported during their daily briefing in Nate's office. "Vanessa tried accessing your personal email accounts this morning. Unsuccessfully, of course. Gregory attempted to retrieve files from his Monarch office last night, but was escorted out by security." Nate nodded, reviewing the updates. "And the baby?" "Still with Vanessa at her mother's house. Gregory hasn't visited yet." "He won't," Nate said confidently. "A child complicates his plans. He wanted my money, not family responsibility." The first serious counter-move came when Bennett Kramer filed an emergency petition claiming Nate had hidden assets offshore and was planning to flee the country. The filing forced Nate to surrender his passport temporarily and froze several of his business accounts. "They're trying to hurt your company," Abigail warned. "If we don't get this resolved quickly, it could impact your operations." "Let them think they've won this round," Nate replied. "It plays into our strategy." That strategy became clear the following day when Lynette Winters, who had remained ostensibly friendly with Vanessa, invited her for coffee to catch up. During their conversation, carefully orchestrated and recorded with Lynette's consent, Vanessa revealed her true feelings. "Nate was always just a stepping stone," she confided, believing she was speaking to a sympathetic ear. "Gregory and I have been planning this for months. Once the divorce is settled, we'll take Nate's millions and relocate, probably Singapore. Gregory has connections there." "What about the baby?" Lynette asked innocently. Vanessa waved dismissively. "My mother can raise him until we're settled. Children don't fit into our immediate plans." The recording was devastating, revealing not only Vanessa's calculated betrayal, but also her willingness to abandon her newborn son. When presented to the judge overseeing the emergency petition, it resulted in an immediate reversal of the asset freeze and a formal censure of Bennett Kramer for filing misleading claims. Vanessa's counterattack had backfired spectacularly, but she wasn't finished. That evening, as Nate worked late in his home office, the security system alerted him to movement near the property's perimeter. The cameras showed Gregory Holt's distinctive silver Porsche parked down the street, and two figures approaching through the wooded section of the yard. Nate smiled coldly and pressed a button on his desk. Outside, carefully concealed lights flooded the property with blinding brightness, while an automated system began recording from multiple angles. He watched the monitors as Gregory and Vanessa froze like startled deer, then scrambled back toward the street. "Got you," Nate murmured, sending the footage directly to his attorney and the detective handling Gregory's case at the SEC. The attempted break-in would be the final nail in their legal coffins. But for Nate, it wasn't enough. Legal victories were satisfying but impersonal. He wanted them to feel the same devastating betrayal he had experienced. And for that, he needed the board meeting scheduled for the following week. Chapter 7, Endgame. The Monarch Financial quarterly board meeting was held in their downtown headquarters, 30 stories above the city in a glass-walled conference room that offered panoramic views. Nate arrived early, escorted by Darlene Quinn herself. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as they rode the private elevator. "Once it's done, there's no going back." Nate adjusted his tie. Some things shouldn't be forgiven. The boardroom filled gradually with 12 impeccably dressed men and women who represented the power structure of one of the city's oldest financial institutions. Gregory Holt had been summoned to address the allegations against him, and he entered with the confidence of a man who believed he could charm his way out of any situation. He faltered momentarily upon seeing Nate seated beside Darlene. "Mr. Ventura," he acknowledged stiffly. "I wasn't aware you'd be joining us." "Mr. Holt," Nate replied with a slight nod. "Consider me an interested party." The meeting began with formalities before Darlene directed their attention to the matter at hand. "As you know, serious allegations have been made regarding Mr. Holt's professional conduct and potential financial improprieties," she stated. "Mr. Holt has requested this opportunity to address the board directly." Gregory stood, straightening his bespoke suit. "Thank you, Chairwoman Quinn. Esteemed board members, I want to address these malicious rumors head-on. Yes, I made some personal investment decisions that, in retrospect, might appear questionable when viewed without context. But I categorically deny any intentional wrongdoing or misuse of company information." He continued smoothly, weaving a plausible narrative of coincidental timing and independent research. The board members listened impassively, giving nothing away. "As for the alleged inappropriate relationship with my assistant," Gregory added with practiced regret, "I acknowledge a lapse in judgment, but assure you it never affected my professional decisions or company interests." When he finished, Darlene thanked him and then turned to Nate. Mr. Ventura has requested a few minutes of the board's time. Given his company's significant security contract with Monarch and his personal connection to this matter, I've granted that request. Nate stood, buttoning his jacket. Thank you, Chairwoman Quinn. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm not here to speak about Mr. Holt's affair with my wife. That's a personal matter, though I note he conveniently failed to mention that the child my wife recently delivered is his biological son. Gregory's face tightened, but he remained silent. I'm here because during my personal investigation, I discovered something that concerns Monarch Financial directly. Nate nodded to Darlene, who distributed folders to each board member. What you're looking at is evidence of communication between Mr. Holt and executives at Archer Global dating back 8 months. The highlighted sections detail his agreement to provide internal information about Monarch's client portfolios and investment strategies in exchange for a future executive position and significant equity. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as board members reviewed the documents. Gregory's confident expression crumbled. This is fabricated, he sputtered. Ventura clearly has a personal vendetta. The emails are authenticated, Darlene interrupted coldly. We verified them independently. Nate continued. My security firm has also documented 7 meetings between Mr. Holt and Archer's CEO in the past 4 months, including detailed discussions of which Monarch clients will be transferable after a strategic reorganization. The evidence was damning. As Gregory attempted to defend himself, growing increasingly desperate, Nate remained calm, methodically dismantling each explanation with additional documentation. When the presentation concluded, Darlene thanked Nate and asked Gregory to step outside while the board deliberated. In the hallway, Gregory confronted Nate with barely contained fury. You've destroyed everything, he hissed. Nate regarded him coolly. No, you did that yourself. I merely ensured you'd face the consequences. This isn't over. For you, it is, Nate replied. The SEC has enough to prosecute. Monarch will terminate you today. Your reputation in the industry is finished. Oh, and Vanessa has been trying to reach you. Something about needing money for the baby. Your baby. Gregory's face contorted with rage. She meant nothing to me. The baby means nothing. It was about the money, your money. Nate smiled. I know. I have that recorded too. He walked away as Darlene emerged to deliver the board's decision. Immediate termination, forfeiture of all unvested compensation, and full cooperation with regulatory investigations. Gregory Holt left the building that day with nothing but the contents of a cardboard box and the knowledge that his career in finance was over. By evening, his termination for cause was public knowledge, sending his personal stock value plummeting in both professional and social circles. Phase 1 of the endgame was complete. Phase 2 awaited at Vanessa's mother's house, where Brody had confirmed she was packing hastily after learning of Gregory's downfall. Chapter 8: Destruction. Vanessa's mother lived in a modest colonial in the suburbs, the type of middle-class neighborhood Vanessa had been desperate to escape. When Nate's car pulled into the driveway, he saw frantic movement behind the curtains. He approached the door unhurriedly, Palmer Reed following at a discreet distance. When Vanessa's mother answered, her expression was a mixture of hostility and fear. She doesn't want to see you, Mrs. Bryant stated firmly. I'm not here to see her, Nate replied. I'm here about my legal and financial obligations to her child. The mention of money softened Mrs. Bryant's stance. Wait here. Moments later, Vanessa appeared, looking haggard but defiant. Baby Gregory could be heard crying somewhere in the background. Come to gloat, she spat. I came to offer clarity, Nate replied. May I come in? Reluctantly, Vanessa stepped aside. In the living room, Nate declined to sit, instead removing a document from his briefcase and placing it on the coffee table. This is a comprehensive settlement offer. Given recent developments, your attorney advised you to take it. Vanessa eyed the document suspiciously. What developments? Gregory has been terminated for cause. The SEC is filing charges. In this, he placed a flash drive beside the papers. Contains the full recording of your coffee meeting with Lynette, where you outlined your plan to take my money and abandon your child with your mother while you and Gregory started a new life abroad. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You set me up. I merely gave you the opportunity to reveal who you really are. Vanessa snatched up the settlement document, scanning it frantically. This offers nothing. A one-time payment of $100,000, and I relinquish all claims. It's $100,000 more than you deserve under the prenup. I'll fight this, she hissed. I'll take you to court. I'll tell everyone how you manipulated and controlled me, how you drove me to Gregory. Nate smiled coldly. By all means, let's make this public. I'm sure People magazine would love the story of how you seduced your boss to get ahead, conceived a child while married, and planned to abandon the baby while fleeing the country with your ill-gotten divorce settlement. The baby's cries grew louder from another room. Vanessa didn't move to comfort him. You have 24 hours to sign, Nate continued. After that, the offer expires and I release everything. The recordings, the text, the security footage, to both the authorities and the media. You're a monster, Vanessa whispered. No, Nate corrected quietly. I'm just someone who finally saw you clearly. As he turned to leave, Vanessa's desperation peaked. What about the baby? He's innocent in all this. Nate paused at the door. The settlement includes my agreement not to press charges for fraud. Specifically, your attempt to register another man's child with my surname to claim child support. As for his future care, that's between you and Gregory. Though I understand his assets are currently frozen by the SEC. The look of dawning horror on Vanessa's face as she realized the full extent of her predicament was the first moment of genuine satisfaction Nate had felt in months. The next day, Abigail called to confirm that Vanessa had signed the settlement. By afternoon, Gregory's attorney had reached out, seeking his own settlement to avoid Nate filing a civil suit for alienation of affection and emotional distress. He's offering $500,000, Abigail reported. I don't want his money, Nate replied. I want him to face every consequence of his actions. The final piece fell into place 3 days later when the SEC, armed with evidence Nate had provided, raided Gregory's home and discovered additional documents implicating him in a broader scheme involving multiple financial institutions. The charges expanded from insider trading to wire fraud and conspiracy. When local news covered Gregory's arrest, the cameras caught a telling moment. Vanessa, standing in her mother's doorway, turning away as reporters approached for comment. No sign of the baby. No sign of the confident woman who had once believed she could take everything Nate had built. Is it enough? Brody asked that evening as they sat in Nate's office, watching the coverage. Nate considered the question. The destruction was complete. Gregory facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Vanessa left with nothing but a meager settlement and a child she'd never wanted, their carefully constructed plans demolished beyond repair. It's enough, he decided finally. It's time to move forward. Chapter 9. Ashes. 6 months passed. Winter yielded to spring, and with it came the final dissolution of Nate's marriage. The divorce was granted without fanfare, a simple legal proceeding that officially ended what had effectively been over since the day of the missed baby shower. Nate sold the lake house, unable to separate it from memories of Vanessa. The nursery was dismantled, its contents donated anonymously to a women's shelter. He moved into a downtown penthouse and focused on expanding his business, securing government contracts that doubled Ventura Securities' valuation. Gregory Holt accepted a plea deal, 5 years in a minimum security facility and forfeiture of most of his assets. Financial publications ran feature stories on his spectacular fall, with sidebars mentioning his personal scandal involving his former assistant. Vanessa disappeared from public view. Through Palmer, Nate learned she had moved to Arizona with her mother and the baby, living modestly on what remained of her settlement. She had attempted to contact Gregory in prison, seeking additional support for their son, but her messages went unanswered. Do you ever think about the child? Sophia asked during a rare social dinner with the team that had helped execute Nate's revenge. No, Nate answered truthfully. He was never mine. And her. Brody pressed. Do you think about Vanessa? Nate considered the question. Not in the way you mean. I think about the lessons I learned. About seeing people for who they really are, not who we want them to be. After dinner, walking alone through the city streets, Nate found himself passing the restaurant where he'd first met Vanessa. Through the window, he could see couples dining, laughing, sharing moments they believed were genuine. He wondered how many were performing for each other, how many harbored secret plans and betrayals. His phone rang. Darlene Quinn, now a close ally and occasional dinner companion. "The board approved your security proposal," she said when he answered. "Full implementation across all Monarch properties." "Good news," Nate replied. "I'll have contracts drawn up tomorrow." "There's more," Darlene continued. "We've received acquisition interest from Westfield International. The offer's substantial. If it goes through, your company stands to gain significant new business." Nate smiled. Westfield International was Archer Global's main competitor, the company Gregory had rejected in favor of his ill-fated Archer deal. "Poetic justice," he murmured. "What was that?" "Nothing. Let's discuss over dinner tomorrow." As he hung up, Nate caught his reflection in a darkened shop window. He looked different, harder, perhaps, but more authentic. The man who had believed in fairy tales was gone, replaced by someone who understood that trust must be earned and verified, never freely given. From the ashes of betrayal, he had forged something stronger. Not happiness, exactly, but clarity. Purpose. A life defined by his own terms rather than someone else's deception. His phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Vanessa. We need to talk. Please." Nate deleted the message without replying and continued walking. Some chapters deserved no epilogue. Some betrayals permitted no forgiveness. Some fires left only ashes, with no phoenix to rise. And Nate Ventura was at peace with that finality. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.